Welcome back to another edition of the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Johnson. We're nearing year end, which gave me a great reason to bring on Fried Egg Golf's Kevin Van Valkenburg and Joseph LaMagna, two of our, people that cover the pro golf beat. And wanted to talk some big picture things about the 2025 season, and then do a little bit of look ahead to 2026. This was a really fun conversation. Really enjoyed it. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. And let's talk about, before we get to our pod, let's talk about our friends at Maui Nui. Holiday gift sets are ready to gift at MauiNuiVenison.com. They are beautifully packaged and made from the cleanest, most nutrient-dense, ready-to-eat venison on the planet. So what is in these holiday gift sets? There's a stick starter pack, a 6-pack, which is great. These sticks, throw them in your golf bag. Don't get low on energy. Have these in your golf bag. Make it really easy to eat. They are shelf-stable, high-protein, low-calorie, and wildly clean sticks. Sticks are kind of all the rage right now. These are as good as it gets. There's also the Always Summer Sausage, which is a small batch fermented and smoked summer sausage. It's seasoned with Hawaiian red sea salt and pink peppercorn. There's 20 grams of protein at only 110 calories per 2-ounce serving. That's pretty good. This year, if you buy any 4 gifts, you get a 5th free, and you can mix and match however you want. So check all of this out at MauiNuiVenison.com/egg. That's MauiNuiVenson.com/egg. They ship nationwide, and they're direct to your door. So no wrapping needed. This is a great gift. This is a great product. Check out Maui Nui Venison. All right, let's get to Kevin and Joseph. All right, I'm welcoming in Kevin Van Valkenburg and Joseph LaMagna, both of Fried Egg Golf, both regular contributors on the written side, and other mediums too. You know, Breakout Star 2025, Design Disasters, but Joseph LaMagna.
Hold on.
We are going to just bat around some topics in pro golf today as we end the year here in 25 and we round the corner into 2026. And I think, a lot of stuff happened this year, frankly, and take a zoom out and kind of where's that land for us going forward and look ahead to 2026. So I prepared a couple questions for you guys. I'll chime in also. But let's start. Who's your player of the year?
Joseph, would you like to go first or second in this? We can
I'll go
alternate.
second.
Okay.
Kick it off.
I am going to go with Rory McIlroy. I wrote a little bit about this. We are currently having the week of Rory discussion on the Fried Egg. We're sort of reliving some of his biggest moments. I will concede that Scottie Scheffler had a better year than Rory McIlroy. Scottie Scheffler is the best golfer in the world. I don't think that there is a dispute to that. But so many of the moments that I think about and I will think about looking back on 2025 involve Rory. The totality of the kind of career achievements, winning the Masters, obviously, winning as second players, winning the Irish Open, winning a Road Ryder Cup. All of those things, to me, just the weight of them was so big that I think I'm going to go with Rory. I will always remember him falling to his knees on the 18th green where I could barely see. I was craning up over, basically standing on someone's shoulders, pushing little kids out of the way to try to get a better look at the 18th green, and just hearing the roar ripple backwards from the crowd. That's just as big of a moment as we've had in golf, since Tiger won in 19 there. But I would argue, like, in some ways, almost an equal of that, just because we'd waited even longer for Rory's quest to be completed in there. So I don't know, Joseph, if you have a different answer, but to me, like, it's just going to feel like the year of Rory. The Players win is huge. The Irish Open win was emotional, and the Road Ryder Cup thing, he called his shot. Like that is such an important kind of thing. We were, thinking he could look really dumb if that didn't work out, but he slapped the table in Italy and said, we're going to win a Road Ryder Cup. And for that, he's my player of the year.
I think it's also Rory. And sure, if you stack the wins up right next to one another, Scottie's year is slightly better and strip down all the context, some of which you already provided, Kevin. But all right, Scottie wins. I said basically 3 wins, depending on how you weight it. Like the 2 majors, which are massive, and then the BMW and the Memorial, like whatever, call it half a win each, 3 wins. I'm not even counting the Pro Core or the win at TPC Craig Ranch. I don't think we really need to. In the history
the Craig
books,
Ranch win's arguably the best win.
I don't think we see eye to eye on that one, but for Rory, 2 massive wins, the Masters and the Players. Pebble's a huge win. The Irish Open's a big win, especially for Rory. For me, it's the Ryder Cup. Not even the career Grand Slam thing, even though I think that matters, obviously, but you could argue that that's not really this year specifically. Winning a road Ryder Cup, and Kevin, this is a point you made, I believe, during the Ryder Cup, that we should evaluate players based on more than just their 72-hole stroke play record. And I think Rory's ability to play around the globe, as he's done this year, win in different formats, go 3-1-1, and the only loss in the Ryder Cup coming on Sunday in singles when he was completely gassed and Europe kind of had it in the bag anyway. I think it's a more well-rounded year. And sure, the win total is slightly lower. It's not quite as prestigious, but it's really hard for me to look past winning a Road Ryder Cup, the Masters, and a Players. So I think it's his year.
Joseph, people got so mad when I tried to argue that match play should be part of how we view you as a golfer overall. I was all kinds of like, you're trying to just throw out hot takes to generate some juice for your new job. What an embarrassment you are. But my point in some ways was, what is the majority of golf that most people play around the world? Like play with your friends. Like it's match play. We can't just look at stroke play as the one sort of test of like your abilities as a golfer. Obviously, like match play freaking matters. And no matter how much the game tries to sort of weed out some of it because of television, it still truly matters. You go play a game on Sunday with your friends, you're playing match play, you're having a partner, you're picking up your partner or someone's picking you up. I just feel like that should have more weight into it. Obviously, like as a data guy, Joseph, you would be able to say, look, there's a lot of variance in like how we've used like the small sample size of the Ryder Cup. We can't definitively say that Scottie Scheffler is not a good match play player. That seems sort of silly, especially he made it to the finals of the Dell match play years ago at Austin Country Club. So I won't go that far to say that Scottie is not a great match play player yet, but Rory clearly is. And I think that should matter in the way we evaluate things.
Real quick here, Rory did not win a TGL match, and that's match play.
Thank you, Andy. That is an important context. It's really essential. The ball frauds, basically, like, I don't know, like how could you put your name on this and being like a big time investor in it and not deliver one win for your fans?
To be clear, Scottie Scheffler also was 0 TGL wins.
That's true.
The one thing I wonder about with this situation that we're in, and this happens, I feel like, with NBA MVP all the time, is people like in the moment, yes, Rory is the player of the year. We're all in agreement. We're swept up in the emotions of the Masters win and the emotions of winning the Irish Open, the kind of start of the year with the Players and winning the Way Ryder Cup. But if in 15 years, when those emotions are kind of ripped away, the storylines of these wins are ripped away, people will look at it as they do with MVPs and be like, well, that was a ceremonial Derrick Rose MVP. He shouldn't have been the MVP. LeBron should have been the MVP. And, the people are already looking at the Joel Embiid MVP and being like, Nikola Jokic should have just won another one that year. And is that what's going to happen? Because we look at Scottie and the end of the year, the 2 majors, 6 wins, just, he's just a kind of tour de force once he got kind of unrusty from the hand injury.
Yeah. And you could give LeBron the MVP like a million of those years. I think there is an element of voter fatigue, but I don't think there's years where that Scotty's was slightly better, and I think to Kevin's point, the gravity of Rory's wins. God, that Ryder Cup, that is a huge part of what happened this year. And again, I don't know that Scotty's a bad match play golfer, but for him to almost go 0-5 that week in a massive moment, I think it's fair to penalize that and use that as sort of a tiebreaker. So I don't think it's being overreactive to say that. I don't think it's a purely emotional response to say that Rory McIlroy's year in totality outweighed Scotty's.
The one disappointment I feel like is that they didn't really have a major where the both of them were playing great. Like we didn't really ever get like a clash, where they were both really in contention. I mean, I think where they both finished top 20 at Oakmont, but neither one was in it at all. Rory was completely checked out at the PGA, arguing about whether the media should be leaking his driver stuff. And I think Rory finished top 10 at Portrush, but was never truly in contention. That was the one thing I feel like we missed out on, that where they could have, and ultimately they play a Ryder Cup match, and they both are kind of completely gassed. And so we don't even get like a true, Scottie beats him, right? If I'm correct in that,
yes.
But it didn't really feel like it was a definitive sort of, Scottie outplayed him. It was both, they kind of both limped home to the finish. So if you're a Scheffler person, you're like, well, come on, like the one time they truly went head to head, Scottie won. I mean, maybe that's a point in Scotty's favor, but I'm hopeful for 26 that we'll get, both of them like chasing something the back nine at Augusta. I mean, Rory's one of the few people who could push Scottie at a place where he's the most comfortable in the world. So
what we got with Rory was the Bryson kind of head to heads, right? We got the Masters. I think that became like almost a footnote on the Masters because of what happened on the back nine. But the front nine, he double bogeys the first hole, and it's like, oh, Bryson's going to do it again, especially after Bryson birdied 2. And that was the story of that Masters really carrying through from Friday was, oh, this is setting up for a historic rematch between Bryson and Rory. That's been the real rivalry that we've had in golf the last couple of years, which, it's hard to get golf rivalries. It's really hard to get showdowns because there's just so many players and they have to both play great in the same week. And that just doesn't happen very often.
And probably won't, right? Like the chances we ever see Rory go to head with Scottie, final round of a major is probably like under 5%.
It happened at LA. They were both in the second to last group.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. That's I think the closest we've had, if my memory serves.
Yeah, they were both in it at Brookline a little bit. Brookline's like one of the few majors that feels like Scottie was like really there for the taking and just didn't do it. He almost became like an afterthought in that, but he was like one putt away from being in that, a potential playoff if that putt doesn't get made on 18. So
that was an incredible major. By the way,
it was a great major.
Like it gets kind of like lost because you have Pinehurst and you have the Masters, and LA was a really good finish, but that Brookline finish was amazing. And one of the reasons it'll get buried is because Matt Fitzpatrick just isn't a sexy name,
Yeah.
The thing with Scottie, and this is where, the voter fatigue thing kind of comes in. He's setting a absurd standard. And one of my questions with him and this, the player of the year, is him just winning 6 or 7 times going to be the new norm?
I think yes. One of your questions, we can just jump ahead to that, is like, what's a reasonable expectation for Scottie in 2026? I wrote down 5 wins and 1 major. Like that is anything other than that, I think would be kind of a disappointing year. If Scottie won 3 times and no majors, we'd be like, man, what a huge letdown. And yet like that's a career for a lot of guys. So I would say like, if you want to get crazy and be like, what's a like an incredible year for Scottie? It's like 8 wins and 2 majors at least, maybe, and contending for a third, like maybe, stringing together, okay, wins the Masters and then, wins the PGA, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, is he going to win freaking 4 in a row here? Like, can he win the US Open to complete this thing? Like, I think that's like not outlandish, sort of high end expectation for him. And I feel some ways like even when we praise Rory, we're kind of disrespecting like how freaking good that Scottie is. It's just that Rory's so interesting. And I'm one of those people who thinks that Scottie is actually a lot more interesting than he gets credit for. But Rory is still like the straw that stirs the drink. Like, he is just a person who your eyeballs go to. But I feel like we are trending into like, look, Scottie's going to set a standard over the next 5 years that's, is going to be impossible for anyone else to match. The person who's going to truly challenge Scottie Scheffler is probably like 14, 15 years old right now. And when they're 23 and Scottie's 36, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, there's a new kid in town. But that person I don't feel like is playing on the PGA Tour or live right now.
Scottie's won 21 times worldwide over the last 4 years. So he's averaging over 5 wins a year. Just to put this in context, Dustin Johnson, generational player. Do you know how many years he had over 5 wins worldwide?
Maybe once?
Yeah, once.
0. Most wins he ever had in a year is 4. Just to, from like a context standpoint, Scottie's worst year in terms of win total, winning is just such a challenging thing. His worst win total is 4. That was the year where he just finished runner up like every week because he couldn't make putts. And that year was effectively, what Dustin Johnson's best year from a win perspective looked like of his career.
I do also to the both of your points. I think when we look back at Scottie Scheffler's career 25, 30 years from now, the part that we probably will not represent appropriately is how many of those wins were blowouts. I don't think you always look at the differential in retrospect. And Scottie has taken so many tournaments and blown them out. Portrush this year was not a competitive back nine. Quail was competitive, but there have been so many of these moments that Scottie's just completely separated himself. And Kevin, you're kind of getting at this, but I do think Scottie has kind of readjusted expectations as to how consistent a golfer can be. We've always assumed that, they're one of the best players in the world, but it's probably going to drop off this next year. 18 months from now, there's going to be a new world number one. Scottie's been the only example in the modern era, really outside of Tiger, where you can say, I think 12 months from now, 24 months from now, Scottie Scheffler will still be the best player in the world. And I feel that way right now. But at least a year from now, I think there's almost no chance that there's going to be a different world number one 12 months from now.
He would have to have a legitimately down week, I feel like, to not win the PGA next year. Like, Aronimik should set up like, that should be just like a Scottie course. It just seems to me like, yeah, of course he's going to win there. Now, I can't speak to like St. George's or, Shinnecock has a much more like tougher test and more variables there, but like
Birkdale,
excuse me. Same deal. Like I feel, but like, how many PGAs could Scottie rack up? Just like the courses are always going to be sort of favoring his sort of style of golf.
I gave us almost the same answer you did, Kevin, for what should the expectation be. I think mine's framed a little differently, so I'd be curious for both of your reactions. But I think there are basically 10 tournaments right now on the PGA Tour schedule that matter. The majors, I know those aren't PGA Tour events, but they're on the schedule. Sure. The majors, the Players, Memorial, Genesis, that gets you to 7, and then Pebble, Bay Hill, and Quail. Okay. Don't necessarily love all those golf courses, but I think those are all legit 10 events. The honorable mention I would throw in is the Scottish Open, which I think has kind of become a legit event.
Doesn't play Quail historically that week.
True. So he might not even play. But let's just say you take that 10, 11 events. I think those are the ones that we'll look back on that matter with somebody's legacy. I think Scottie wins a major and 2 more legit wins of that other subset. Could be another major, could be the Players, could be Memorial, but I think that should be the expectation. Could he pick off Colonial or Craig Ranch or one of these other ones that he might elect to play in? Sure, but not even counting those. I think it's 1 major and 2 other bona fide tough wins.
I was just thinking in my mind, like, he hasn't played that well at Quail, or excuse me, at Pebble. I looked it up, and he finished top 10 there twice, and the 2 times he's played the Pro-Am. So like that's kind of like the standard that he is, where I think like, he hasn't played that great there, and he's got 2 top 10s.
I think a fascinating aspect of Scottie, along with other players that I'd put in this realm, Rahm, Rory, and Bryson, is if you go home without a major, no matter almost what you do elsewhere, I think Scottie could win 10 PGA Tour events. If he doesn't win a major, it's probably a disappointment at this point in his career.
Yeah,
sure. A prime, it's like the Tiger standard. A prime of a piece of your prime goes by, and you don't add to that historical total. I think absolutely. Like, and Rory's probably going to be the same way. I would be interesting. I mean, I don't know that Bryson would quite view it that way. If you told Bryson he could get 10 million YouTube subscribers and win no majors this year, he might take that deal, because he might be like, oh, I'm growing the game. That's much more, important to do that than. And you know what? I'm not going to sit here and say he's flat out wrong. Like, if you don't want to judge yourself by the standards of history, if you're more interested in the now, then great. But I would think for Rahm, for Scottie, for Rory, that's the only, that's another tier of guys who has to win majors for next year to matter.
Yeah, my expectations in terms of Scottie for next year are probably along the lines. Like, if I was thinking about setting an over-under for majors, and I kind of leaned that the over-under would be 1.5, not 0.5, which, I can't remember. I don't think there's ever been a time where I've felt that way with a player. Maybe Brooks, while he was in his heyday, was like, okay, but I don't think he ever had the consistency to get there.
No.
And I think my win total honestly would probably skew 6.5 for Scottie
for his career.
For this, no, saying for a win total in 26.
Oh, got it.
6.5, 1.5. You think about this year, and the big what if is the hand injury, and how did that change the whole trajectory of the year?
Yeah, I mean, just think about his like Open Championship record. Birkdale's just a place that like is for big dogs, right? Ian Baker Finch is the only guy to ever win at Birkdale who didn't win other majors. So that sort of says to me like, okay, like, this is a place that separates like good from great, and it just feels like, all right, cool, who's going to go there and handle like the conditions, the wind, and like the contours, and the, there's a new few like new hole setups, whatever. They're like, it's going to be Scottie. Of course it is.
You know what Birkdale's kind of known for?
Stinky drops,
being the fairest links course, and we know Scottie likes his fair golf.
Fairness.
So it's a good fit for him. All right, let's move on to non-Scottie Rory topics. Actually, let's stay there. We'll bounce back to this one, but this is Scottie Rory. I feel like they've opened up kind of their own tier, and it's like Scottie gap, Rory gap. If you were going to make a bet on a player most likely to jump into one of those tiers in 26, who would it be?
I can go first.
Go, please. I think I have a guess who you might pick.
Who do you think I'm going to pick?
I think Cam Young, right? Isn't that would be the player with the potential to get into that higher tier? Is that?
We might get to him later, but I'm not.
Okay.
I'm realistic about Cam Young. I think he's very good. We'll get to him. I think the right answer is to stay the course with Ludwig. And I don't see any reason why you would jump ship. If you talk to people who follow college golf very closely, they will always tell you that he's one of the best college golfers, most polished golfers of the 21st century. Machine off the tee with his ball striking. I was looking through his stats today in preparation for this pod, and I don't know that I realized how big of a difference his iron play was from the first half of this year, where he kind of struggled, to the back half of this year, where he's now rattled off 8 straight top 25s, 4 top 10. 4 of those were top 10s. I mean, this is a very well-built golfer who's already contended in multiple Masters now. He's 26, we talked about it on a pod recently, Andy, of how we're seeing all the best golfers in the world play their best golf between ages 27 and 35. So I think Ludwig's maybe underwhelmed a little bit so far in his professional career, despite still winning, despite still being in contention in multiple majors. He's played well in Ryder Cups. Like, I think it's crazy to be disappointed with what the future may hold for Ludwig. If anything, might need to tighten up the short game a little bit, but one of the best drivers of the golf ball in the world, clearly top 5, good putter, and his iron plays really started to turn around recently. I think if he's the number 2, number 3 golfer in the world this time next year, it really shouldn't sneak up on anybody.
I don't mind that take at all. I feel like I want to see it. I want to see him prove it. I feel like maybe the hype for Ludwig got a little bit in my head where I expected more than what I saw. And maybe that was on me. It's sort of unrealistic to expect him to just follow up on that master performance and come out and win a major the next year. But I'm on board with that. For my pick, I'm going to stick in the Scandinavian area and take Victor Hovland. I feel like been there, done that, had a moment when he was the best golfer briefly in the world for a 3-4 month stretch, and has gotten back to where the short game is like replacement level decent. He's not losing strokes around the greens anymore. He's not gaining them. It's like very close to, I think it's like almost even. I looked over his last 25 starts and it's sort of like break even. I think it just, Andy, we always say over and over that like iron game travels. If you're good at hitting approaches, if you can hit the ball high and you can stop it on firm greens, you can play kind of anywhere. There was a time when he was like an unbelievably consistent driver, just hitting that, hard cut that, would fade 5 yards at the most. And he knew that he could just take the left side of the golf course out of play all the time. And I think we're kind of trending back towards that. And he's obviously he was in contention at Oakmont, could have won there. I think he would definitely be has shown he has the talent to do it. The mental stuff is always a little bit of a work in progress, but I kind of think he's learned a little bit about who he is over the last couple years and what he kind of needs to do. As long as he doesn't discover a video on Instagram all of a sudden that's like, oh, you should chip cross-handed, and then he all of a sudden dives down that weird rabbit hole. I would, if I were his coach or his family or whatever, I would just basically take his phone away from him for a year and be like, let's just go basically work on feel. No videos, no swing training aids, whatever. And I think he wasn't using the G box or some shallower at the US Open. I saw people were always tagging me in that stuff, given my weird obsession with training aids. So let's keep that kind of stuff, what pro senders, whatever, out of his wheelhouse. Don't let him touch any of that shit. And very good chance he could challenge that next tier.
So you're prescribing the Rory go hit balls. He did that in New York last year while he was filming Happy Gilmore, I believe. He went and hit balls and with no view of flight.
Yeah, just
strictly hitting balls into a turned off simulator.
Put a sheet up in your hotel, and put the mattress behind the sheet, and just thump some balls into it. The first 3 feet of flight. That's all you need to think about.
That's all you want out of Victor. I think those are both interesting propositions. For Ludwig, I think it's cleaning up the approach in the short game, obviously. But one of the things that gives me a lot of hope about the Ludwig is based off of early returns, you could just pencil him in to contending at Augusta National. And I think that championship kind of tests a lot of skills of talent, the ability to battle against history being one of them, just having it. It is a moment. I think not enough is paid to this, that the Masters is the biggest tournament of the year. By far, it's the one they want to win the most. And one of the things about golf and golf tournaments is that there is just this essence of, did you meet the moment?
Yeah.
And there are so many guys that feel great going into that Masters and just frankly don't get off the bus. And that happens in competitive golf where you do not get off the bus. And that is the tournament that is most likely to create that dynamic in these players. And I think the thing that my biggest, beyond just the measurables, the pure, you're watching him hit a golf ball, the pure thing about Ludwig is that in 2 attempts at the Masters, he has more than gotten off the bus. He has been just a figurative player in the entire tournament late into Sunday. And that is something that not everybody can do. And for me, though, I'm going with Jon Rahm. I think that golfers are just creatures of habit. Consistency in your routine and the way you prepare to play golf is, you have to be boring. They are the most boring people in the world. Like, I think one of the worst things is to be creative. Like, you have to have so much talent if you are creative and an out of the box thinker on the PGA Tour, because life is mundane. You go to the same places, you stay in the same hotels, you eat the same player dining every week. And really what golf rewards is just habitual consistency. And for Jon Rahm going to live, I think he kind of overrated what that did. Now, I think he's got a few extra homes than he had before and a lot more money in his bank account, and he was compensated for that. But what he lost was a year of his prime, where he just was trying to learn the new reality of how he plays pro golf. Last year, we saw him take a number of strides, and I think this is the year that he comes back and re-enters the discussion of, could this be the best player in the world? Maybe not all the way to Scottie's level, but up at Rory's level. So that would be my guy to jump back up into that tier that he once was in.
Is there anything that's holding Rahm back other than just the routine right now? I would be curious to get your guys' thoughts. Like, is there any area of Jon's game where you feel like it's just not as sharp as it needs to be, or something about the approach to things, or, I think it's probably unfair a little bit to say that he kind of melted at the PGA. I think he was going for it. He sort of knew that he had to do something extraordinary late there, and he obviously did not play great. I think he, played the last 4 holes in 4 or 5 over, but he was, pedal down, trying to do anything he could to put some pressure on Scottie. But he was there in contention and sort of, didn't get it done. I don't know. I think the Jon Rahm that I remember and saw up really close when he won that Masters, when he won the US Open, that guy was a freaking closer. I mean, that guy just felt like he was an intimidating presence. He was a guy who could make putts. He was a guy who could make clutch up and downs, was going to put pressure on everybody else. And I just don't see that right now. And I wonder if that's just unfair, the standard that I thought I was holding him to, or if he's kind of regressed a little bit in certain parts of his game.
I'll build the case. I'll build the case against Rahm a little bit. Not that I think
Please do.
Isn't good or anything, but I think in general, and this is, I know, something we've kind of talked about privately, or, when we're traveling at an event, the standard of golf gets raised every single year. And we talk about golfers who were good in 2015, 2018, Spieth, JT, another player that I'm going to get to with one of the prompts later. If they just get back to where they were, that's not good enough. And you hear so many golfers talking about how much better professional golf is, the top level of professional golf right now compared to even 3 years ago. So I think with Jon Rahm, he doesn't just need to get back to where he was before he left LIV. He needs to set a much higher standard than he's been playing to. Specifically to your point, Kevin, I think the iron play needs to come up a little bit if there's something that's been holding him back. But just in general, I think this idea of he'll just get back to where he was. We see so many careers that look like parabolas, right? They start to peak and then they start to go down. John's still young. He's 31. So he could easily, again, get back to a level that we're used to seeing him at. I just think the case against him is that Scottie has raised that to a totally different level. Rory's gotten a lot better. These guys have kind of passed him. So I think Jon Rahm has to get a lot better to be on that level, Andy. simply like finding it again or getting comfortable again isn't good enough. So I think I would take the other side of how likely is it that he'll be the world number 2 this time next year. I think that
it's
is
not
the
going to be
case
the world
against
number 2 if they don't have world ranking points for
well, sure.
for Liv.
Not in the world ranking.
The data golf number 2, or
Sure.
whatever, I guess would be.
But I honestly, I think that is the case against him, and it is one I believe in. Where I would be a little more pessimistic on Rahm's chances of ascending into that tier than somebody like Ludwig, who's on the up and up.
I think that PGA was an example of a guy that hadn't been in the mix for a little while. You know, I think this is the underrated aspect of Joseph laid out the 10 events that matter, you know, in a year. None of those are live events. So if you're playing on live, you really play 4 events that matter every year, and those are the majors, and that makes it challenging to be ready to play in the majors. And I think that will forever be the thing that you kind of hang over Jon Rahm's head when you start to look at his career, is what you guys said about losing a year. A year goes by. What we said about Scottie, a year goes by without a major in your prime is kind of disastrous. And now he's at 2 years. You know.
Also, to be fair, those were the 10 PGA Tour events. I said that, Matt. If I'd known Liv Riyadh was an option, then I might have thrown that in there.
Listen,
I
who
would have
among us
gotten Adelaide.
couldn't benefit from putting on, like, you know, bumpy top dressed greens in the dark as part of your major prep?
What was your guys' favorite story, non-Rory, non-Scottie, in 2025?
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm gonna go with JJ Spawn. Made it to the playoff in the players with Rory. Obviously, you know, seemed like, oh well, he's not on the same level as Rory. Clearly, in this, like, you know, Rory hits an unbelievable, like, super easy birdie on 16, and then, you know, closes it out on 17. Essentially by not going in the water there. But I feel like it was almost like when JJ Spawn started contending in the US Open, it was like, holy shit, like, this is not a fluke. Like, this dude actually is like one of the best iron players in the world. And he doesn't drive it like that, short compared to, you know, some of the other guys. I just feel like as a guy who grew up like playing public golf, really was never thought of as like a superstar, to make that putt on the 18th hole at the US Open, I felt exactly like Bob McIntyre. Like, well played, lad. Like you just put your hands together. That was one of my favorite moments of the year. Just seeing like the acknowledgement of the other players. Like, damn, this was hard. And he completely came apart on the front 9 of that US Open to where it looked like he's going to get dropped from coverage, and everybody's like, oh, this is going to be between Adam Scott, Sam Burns, Victor Hovland. And then all of a sudden it's just like JJ's like, nope, like, I'm actually just going to close out this US Open round and take it. And then he played great at the Ryder Cup. And when they would let him play, he doesn't get to play in all the matches because, you know, apparently having a Strixon ball was a sort of scarlet letter against getting to play more matches. And we had to get some of those other bums out there to sort of slap it around. I think JJ was awesome. And he's truly like a top 10 player in the world, which who would have imagined you could say that without laughing 2-3 years ago when he was 180th or something in the world. Like, I like talking to him, interviewing him. He's honest. He's humble. He's self-deprecating. He's interesting. Obviously, like, you know, family guy. Like, he's a California guy. I'm all in on the SpawnCon. It was a super fun experience to see throughout the year. And I'd love to see him, you know, contend again in 26.
I think the thing with Spawn, and he was going to be mine. I'll come up with another one after Joseph talks, but is all the close calls too. He was leading Sony at the beginning of the year down the stretch. He obviously had the Players playoff loss where, you know, the most impressive thing about that was nobody gave him a shot, and he went 36 holes in the ring with Rory and just, you know, duked it out. I'll never forget. Was it the chip in he had on 16 on Saturday? That it's just like this guy, like, he's just not going away. He's not going away. And then And then he kind of validated the U.S. Open win with that really strong playoff performance. He lost to Justin Rose in a playoff also. This could have easily been a year where you said Spawn won 3 times, maybe even 4 times this year. You're doing a lot if you're lifting him to a couple. But JJ Spawn, given the way he played, the most unlikely of the wins was the U.S. Open one, I would say. And, you walk away, you probably feel like he should have had 2. And the U.S. Open one was like the one that kind of just, he played great at the end of the round and everybody else kind of played bad. And that one kind of almost fell in his lap. I'll never forget Josh Gregory talking after that U.S. Open about how so many guys that he coaches get complacent after they have a lot of success. And he's like, JJ called me after the players and was like, I want to work. I know I can be elite, and he had gotten to the point where he had a couple million in the bank. And that's where, in what Gregory was kind of saying is where a lot of people turn it off once they have that job security set. He's going to keep his card. He has ascended to a different level, but he was not complacent. He wants to get out and work and get better. And I think that's the thing that I appreciate the most about JJ Spawn is kind of there is like a relentlessness to his work ethic, and it's evident in the journey. The journey is not a journey of this was always meant to be. It was something that required a lot of energy and a lot of failure in his case.
Yep.
We're doing feel good stories and who could be on the tier with Rory and Scottie. And this is not who I'm going to talk about. There are probably some people are like, how can you guys have not mentioned Tommy Fleetwood and winning for the first time and like what he's done recently? But that is not the direction I'm going with.
Okay.
Best story in 2025.
Is it Michael Brennan?
It's not Michael Brennan. I know some people think this is a bit with the player I'm about to mention, but a sincere. I think the coolest thing I saw in 2025 was Cameron Young's breakout at the Ryder Cup. Truly, and winning in front of a crowd that is close to home. The hometown narrative can be overdone, but the U.S. team falling apart at the Ryder Cup this year and Cameron Young being really the lone bright spot and putting the team on his back, going out and dominating against good teams on the other side, going out first for the U.S. on Sunday, to go from being left off the team in 2023 when he had a pretty strong case for being on that team, to then being sent out first and taking down Justin Rose. I would highly encourage people to go on YouTube and watch the highlights of that match. It's like a 15-minute video. How strong he played on Sunday. And then for it to come down to a putting contest the last couple of holes with Justin Rose, stand toe-to-toe, hole that putt on the 18th hole to keep the match alive and keep Team USA alive, get that point. In front of his parents are inside the ropes. Like, it was one of the coolest scenes I've ever seen in golf. And it just felt poetic that the putter has been what's kept him back for so long. He improved it this year. That got him onto the Ryder Cup team. It got him his first win at the Wyndham. It was also then what got him across the finish line against Justin Rose, one of the great Ryder Cup players in European history. Now Cam's not even sneaking up on anybody as one of the players to watch in 2026, one of the best players without a major. So that springboard this year, especially in front of a home crowd, I will never forget it. It was an unbelievable experience watching him up close, watched almost all of his matches up close. And I just think now we have seen the birth of a potential American star.
It's so rare in history, in golf history, for someone to become a good putter, like to raise their level of putting. It's pretty common in golf for someone's putting to decline over time, or guys to lose it, whether it's Jordan Spieth or Tom Watson or Johnny Miller. But it's fascinating to me that whatever it is he figured out, even just to make him like as I said with Haven, like just above average putting, like, you know, just gaining a little bit, a half a stroke. Obviously, a half stroke would be huge, but just not losing strokes on the putting green is enough to make Cameron Young be good, because his driving and ball striking is that good. And I would love to hear like a deep dive, him really dig into, like, you know, I just practiced it more. Well, there's got to be something more than that. Like, There's got to be some kind of insight into what happened here, because just to struggle with it to a point where it like drives you mad previously, and then all of a sudden be like, wait, something clicked, is a great golf story.
And just
Scott
to be
would
clear,
love to know about it.
he didn't get to just an average level now. He was a top 10 putter on tour this year. He is now like, it is a strength, which is an unbelievable turnaround. So
I didn't want to overspeak, but I did think he got decent.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, the difference between Cam Young previously and Cam Young now is that he putted like he's a top 10 putter. And the difference between Scottie Scheffler being a great player and being an all-time great player, who wins 2 majors a year, is like he became a top 10 putter. Yeah. Like it's 2 examples of like, holy shit, like 2 guys figured it out. You could bottle that secret and sell it to just about anybody.
I'd be interested in looking at JJ Spahn's putting numbers too, because that was always something that held him back. So I don't know what his putting numbers looked like.
I think the short game and the putting both got a lot better for Spahn. I'm going to go with Ben Griffin.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I appreciate stories of perseverance, and obviously everybody, it's almost overplayed now, but like the idea of like giving up and then taking a job as a mortgage, broker effectively, and then, firing it back up and making it shortly after. The idea of, Ben Griffin didn't just come out of nowhere. I think that when you hear that story, it's like, this guy was a first team All-American, AJGA player. He won 2 high school individual state titles. He went to North Carolina in, what's the interesting part of of Ben Griffin's career is that he then maybe the most disappointing part of his golf life was from age 20 to age 25 is when he had like his dip. When most people are coming of age and when you expect to be hitting all-time highs, and it's not to say he had a bad college career. He was a good college player, but I think he just never, he wasn't what he was when he was a junior, one of the best juniors in the country. And sure enough, then it just like everything clicks at a certain point. And, you're looking at we always do this thing with the shotgun start where it's like, okay, it's the new year. Let's look at the top 10 players in the world and who's going to drop out, because 4 or 5 of the players in the top 10 in the world drop out every year. And it felt impossible to consider some of these guys falling out of the rank, that top 10, like Colin Morikawa, for example, falling outside the top 10. But here we are. It's near the end of the year. Ben Griffin is going to be one of the players that played his way into the top 10 in the world, along with JJ Spahn. I just never had that on the bingo card, and I think that is just what makes golf so cool, is the idea that there are so many players that are just a fraction away from putting it together, and and also a fraction away from hanging it up out of frustration. And Ben Griffin persevering, becoming an elite player on the PGA Tour, to me, it's just cool. It's a fun story.
What fascinates me, Andy, about that whole thing is like the idea of how emotionally exhausting it is to reach that point where you're like, I'm going to give up. Like, I can't, I don't think I can do this. Like, I know from my own college football career, which lasted 2 years and like consisted of me making 2 tackles. And was like, I was really heartbroken when I kind of came to that moment of like, I don't think I'm good enough to do this anymore. So I'm going to walk away from it. And like, you briefly had a dream of like, could I play a little bit of, golf somewhere on like the lower level circuits and see what happens? And it's like, it's hard to get to that moment where you're like, I guess this isn't going to work out. And then to basically like flip it and be like, all right, well, you know what? Fuck it. I'll give it one more chance. Like, I mean, that's quite an emotional swing. And for all of a sudden for that to click for him, I am really interested in those kind of like aha moments of like, all right, fine, I'll give this one more chance. Because when I was ready to give up on my dream, like I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. I'm not going to like tiptoe back into this and then go play small college football at someplace smaller than Montana that might let me on the field. I was just done. And that took a long time to get there. And I imagine Ben Griffith took a long time to come to that point where he thought maybe he was done, and then all of a sudden he wasn't.
Maybe your football career is not done.
Maybe not.
I think these stories are. I think the thing that's also that makes you appreciate them a little bit is that that JJ Spawn and Ben Griffin aren't going to take where they are for granted, and I think that with the kind of youth invasion that happened in golf, or more so, I would say 10 years ago, where we had just a run, the preceding 10 years to where we are right now, where we just had a run of, young 20-somethings, immediately entered into the top 10 in the world, immediately flying private, tournament to tournament. And maybe that's still the case now. I think when you don't go through it, you take for granted being great. And that, there's almost like an attitude that comes with that, which, some players have. But I think when you're a Ben Griffin or a JJ Spawn, Ben Griffin particularly, JJ Spawn's talked about how he was thinking about quitting 2 years ago. But yeah. Ben Griffin literally quitting and working another job. You will never take for granted the life that he's living now. And I think that is something that I really respect, because he's someone that has put in tireless work, and there were moments where he had to question his belief. There's been some talk about getting better at putting. I, at one point, if you ask any of my friends, discernibly awful putter. But I got a lot better one year. And you know what I did is I locked myself on putting greens with a chalk line. And I just putted down chalk line religiously. 3-4 footers, just practice hitting my line over and over and over again. And you're probably saying, "Oh God, I'd love to do that." But it is after Thanksgiving. It's November. There's a foot of snow on the ground in Chicago. I know it's cold. Practice greens are closed. I got perfect thing for you. The perfect practice putting mat. What I love about this putting mat is that they have a built-in chalk line, effectively, a line that you can just rip putts down all winter long. I promise your putting will get better. It has the auto return with the ball too. This is a nice thing for anybody that's a little lazy. You just sit there and just putt over and over and over again and not have to go get the balls. So unlike when I locked myself on a putting green, I would have to always break to get the balls out of the hole. You don't have to do that. The ball comes right back. They also have a new product, the Chip Shot. This is the first chipping net in market with that auto ball return. It's a large multicolored target that helps improve aim and accuracy, and it can be used on grass outdoors, but also includes a little grass mat for indoor practice. It's exclusive to perfectpractice.com and Amazon. For all these things, use the code FRIEDEGG for 20% off at perfectpractice.com. Unfortunately, we don't have an Amazon promo code. So if you're going to get this, go to perfectpractice.com. A note on the chipping thing. One of the things I like about this, I feel like when I visualize the shot and where I'm landing it, I chip my best. And I think when these like chipping nets, what works really well is you're practicing on where you're landing it, and it gets that visual in your head. So go to perfectpractice.com, use the promo code FRIEDEGG for 20% off. All right, let's get back to Joseph and Kevin. All right, let's get to the next thing here. We're looking ahead now. What will be the major of the year in 2026? A little prediction hat.
Just for you go first on this one. I've gotten to go first a couple times. So.
All right, I want sort of a little bit of a different direction with this. I think it's hard to predict which one's going to come down to the wire. Like what's going to be the one that has an exciting finish. That's just always difficult to guess. I guess the PGA recently has had a lot of those, but I thought going into this year, Oakmont was going to be a litmus test for where we are, especially with equipment. That we have this intersection of the identity of the event, the identity of the golf course is for it to be as hard as possible. And you really can't do that now without pushing things over the edge. And so I think we didn't quite get that because it rained on the weekend. I think Shinnecock is going to present a very interesting litmus test of last time we were there, the fill incident and the greens getting a little bit, close to the line. They applied water on Friday. I'm fascinated to see what we get this year at Shinnecock, because if they decide to push it, then we could see players getting worked up, potentially some ping-ponging around those greens that we haven't seen in a long time in a major championship since we were kind of deprived of it at Oakmont. And if they don't do that, I think it's going to be kind of shocking for people what golfers can do now with modern equipment and how low they can go. It's an impossible dance that the USGA is going to have to do. So it's one of the best golf course, one of the best major champ venues in the world. So even if it's presented properly, it'll be an awesome major championship. And I think there's also the additional layer of opportunity for some controversy because they could push it over the edge, or if they don't, they could go way too low. So I think every US Open basically moving forward, this is a storyline that I'm going to be looking for, but I think we could see things come to a head at Shinnecock.
I love that answer, Joseph. I actually had picked Shinnecock, but I'll go ahead and make a case for the Masters this year. You are going to
bold plank you're walking out onto.
I know. But here's the reason why.
It's going to be good.
You're going to have a freed up Rory. In theory, the loosest, happiest Masters he will ever play in his entire life, because who cares? You have Scottie basically being all right, come on, guys. This is my place. I'm going to win 5 jackets before I'm all said and done. You have Ludwig, who you can contend. Bryson now has a year under his belt in contention at the Masters. You got to think that he's going to be sort of, have learned a little bit from that. I would imagine he's spending all offseason kind of working on his iron play because that was sort of a little bit what held him back in some of those moments.
Do you think he's working on his iron play or his irons more?
We could have balloon shaped irons that come out, broomstick length, all of them. Who knows? You just can't rule out the innovation angle there, Andy. So something Bryson could show up and be completely amazing. Rahm, we just talked about, it's going to be, I think it has the potential to be one of the great kind of building up of hype towards whatever. It's going to be all this talk about what's Rory's going to serve. There's going to be all this talk about does Scottie feel like he's got to answer? Rory got all the attention last year, even though you won 2 majors. It'll be a fascinating showdown. Who knows if that's the first time Tiger will play, and if he'll ever play again. Maybe Tiger will be this is my last Masters, by the way. I don't have it anymore, so I'm going to take one more ceremonial walk. There's so many interesting storylines that are going to be humming come April. And that is even without the buildup of what happens early in the golf season. I love Shinnecock as a venue. Andy once kind of talked and pointed out, which I've always remembered, that every hole faces in a different direction at Shinnecock. And so the wind is really such a kind of a thing that you have to understand how to play. Sometimes you have to hit a 3/4 4-iron into greens instead of trying to fly a 7-iron all the way there, because of how the wind and how the firmness is going to make you play true golf shots. And so I love Shinnecock. I love Birkdale. It'll be fun to revisit the Spieth stuff when we go back there. But I'll pick Masters.
I'm taking Shinnecock. This is a tried and true major venue that delivers awesome drama, whether it be drama about the golf course or drama about the tournament. The golf course is exceptional, as you mentioned. It goes in so many different directions. You get firm conditions. Obviously, it's built on sand. You get wind because it's literally on an island out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So you get wind. And I think one of the best parts of it is that the golf course is repelling by nature. The design of the golf course consistently sheds balls with short grass. And I think that there are very, very, very few things that strike fear in players' eyes. They're, water hazards, out of bounds, and the idea of a ball rolling away without them being able to stop it are the things. And Shinnecock has that last one in spades. Agree with Joseph. It will be a very interesting litmus test. And, whether they screwed up in the last time around there or not, I think, it got to the edge, and, you could have some, at the end of the day, the guy that persevered through it at the time was the best major championship player in the world, right? And I think that's the thing that Shinnecock will do is weeds people out. I don't think that there's anywhere in the world that you have such a on your edge of the seat for Thursday and Friday starts as you do with the 10th tee start at Shinnecock that can just literally ruin somebody's tournament the first hole of the day without any penalty strokes. And we saw that a ton the last time it was around there. So I'm super excited about Shinnecock.
I love one more thing. I just follow up on that. I love the idea of Brooks Koepka being like just trash, like, not contending in any live events, being kind of indifferent, and then just sauntering into Shinnecock like an old cowboy comes back into town. You haven't seen this gunslinger in years, throwing up a first round like 69 and just getting into contention and be like, yeah, why the fuck would I not come back here and compete? Like, this is a Brooks Koepka golf course. I would love to see him just show up and be the old Brooks.
Also very big. It's also a candidate for the come from way behind, like we saw the last one when it's soft in the morning. You talk about some disparity in how a golf course can play. When Finau and Fleetwood went flying up that leaderboard on Saturday, it could happen again.
The level of difficulty for so many shots out there is so high. Particularly when you miss the green, the chip shots are just, they're diabolical. I think that's like maybe what gets lost a little is you have space off the tee. The approach shots are very hard. You have to be really, I think, disciplined with your targets, Joseph. I would, just because of the shapes of the greens and the repelling nature of it. It is so much of a pick your target, commit to your target. Do not allow yourself to play too conservative because that can get you in trouble. You have to play like semi-aggressive, but your target selection has to be so good because when you miss the greens, it is just, you get yourself into positions where it's just, you're looking at these up and downs and, on a regular day out there, you're like, how in the world am I just going to chip this to 15 feet and hope I make a putt? Like, and I think that's the nature of that golf course. I think it's cool when a course is challenging without thick rough, without out of bounds, without, this is a golf course that really defends based off of natural elements, firm turf, short grass, and repelling greens. It is an awesome test.
So what you're saying is they should give Corey Pavin a special exemption to just have a farewell tour. We can revisit his amazing performance there from years ago.
At least we won't have Tiger going out and making a 7 on the first hole like the last time. All right, like what's a player or who's a player that you expect to bounce back in 26 and who's a player you expect to continue to struggle in 26?
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm going to pick the obvious one on the board here. I think Xander will be back. I think, does he ever putt quite as well as he did, 2 years ago, which kind of was a huge, I guess like difference maker in some ways. I don't know, but Xander's just he's a world-class player. Like all the sort of, he put to bed all the, I think, kind of jokes about being a house cat and whether, he was awesome in those majors. Not that Valhalla was like anything that you could truly like historically be put up there great, but he was awesome at Troon. And, the injury just kind of completely sort of made his season sort of a wash, right? We have a rib injury, like you have to compensate for it. Then all of a sudden, like you're out, you're just not ever going to get the same feels. And I think it's time for Xander to kind of re-exert himself. Like, he's a top 5 player in the world. Is he, on the same level as Rom and Scottie and Rory? Maybe. He certainly has the potential to do it. He's shown he was there briefly. So I it's an obvious selection, I think, but I really would, Xander's come close to, he's contended in 2 Masters, 3 Masters. He's finished in the top 10 a bunch of times. You could easily see Xander being right there, but playing great. And all of a sudden it's like, man, Scottie and Rory, they got to step on it. They want to catch Xander. He shot 65 in the first round. And all of a sudden he's the guy who's controlling the sort of tempo of this tournament. I think that's a real easy thing to envision.
I'll do the same. I'm not going to try to get creative on the fly here. I had Xander Schauffele as well. I think it's a no-brainer. He's at a top 10 in a major every year since 2017 when he made his major championship debut, except for 2022. But in 2022, he had 3 top 15s. He's been one of the best major championship players of the past decade. I mean, is the Bay Current Classic the biggest golf tournament in the world? No, but he did win this fall, and I think that is a sign that the rust is probably starting to shake off a little bit, and that, as Kevin said, the health issues he's had, the injuries, like a rib injury is a big deal. And I believe he made his season debut at Bay Hill, which is like the worst place you could make it, and that's in March. Like he didn't really have a long runway to get prepped for the majors, which happened so quickly that it was essentially a lost year. So the way I feel like maybe if you had to do like what is the biggest difference between the way players talk about a golfer and fans think about a golfer, Xander Schauffele is right at the top of the list of somebody that every golfer has so much admiration for. I can remember Phil years ago, 3-4 years ago, saying like Xander Schauffele is kind of the guy. Like when we play games, like he's the one kicking people's butts. So I think the chances that, like you said, Kevin, is he on Rom, Rory, and Scottie's tier? Like, I think the chance that Xander is on Rom and Rory's tier is pretty strong next year. Not I don't think he'll be on Scottie's tier, but I think Xander's absolutely. I almost picked him for the player who could be on that tier.
Yep.
When I went Ludwig, like it could easily be Xander.
I'll go with Colin Morikawa.
Oof.
Last year was a disaster, and I'm going to bet on the previous track record over the 1 year sample size and say it's going to be a bad year. It was just a bad year. I mean, the guy has been a machine in major championships. Obviously, he picked off the 2 early on, but he's got 7 top 5 finishes in majors in 21 or 24 starts. He is a world-class player, world-class iron player. Obviously, I think the big question is always going to center around the greens, and does he have enough pop in the bat? Has he, but like the iron play, I think will return to form and get back to that top tier level. And I'm really interested to see what the year. I just think from a PR and distraction standpoint, the year can't be worse than last year. I would just urge him to just smile and answer questions that don't say anything of substance. That's all he has to do to avoid the ire of the media. You complain about these golfers being media trained, and you want him to smile and say nothing of substance? What is this? I mean, if he wants to play good golf, it's like kind of a recipe to play good golf.
Yeah, fair.
And I'm going to argue the flip side of that, because I had him down as the player I think is going to continue to struggle.
All right.
By continue to struggle, I don't think he's going to continue to like fall. I think that his iron play will always sort of keep him around being a top 20 player. I think the days of Colin Morikawa being a top 5 player are done. I think the days of being a top 10 player could sneak in the bottom 10. But I do not think, Joseph, it goes back to our conversation we brought up earlier. You have to get better now. You can't just like return to your old ways. And I think at some point there's a chance that Morikawa will be like, man, I gotta get some more speed. I gotta pick up some distance. And then how does that affect the rest of your swing? Does that take time away from your short game or your putting? Like, you can't really compete at that top tier level other than a few courses hitting at 305 anymore, when, guys are stepping up and hitting at 340. And I always remember an interview he did at the Masters after Scottie won, where he was talking about trying to catch him, and he was talking about the 5th hole. And he was like, yeah, like I'm coming into that hole with a 5 iron and he's got an 8 iron. Like the margin for error for me is so slim. And it's like, what do I do? Like I can't drive it past that bunker. So I have to play it kind of way out to the right. And then I'm coming in at a slightly worse angle. And it's really hard to give up 30, 40 yards off the tee to somebody when they don't make mistakes. And so, did Colin catch a heater in a time when, Harding Park just happened to be playing firm and fast, so distance didn't quite matter? Did Royal St. George's, like the lack of fans at either place, like did that put him in a different kind of mindset that was easier to kind of not be overwhelmed by major championship pressure? I think he's getting bad advice from people around him not about the golf swing stuff, but you mentioned it with the media stuff. That is such a dumb fight to pick. And the idea that your agent is telling you don't owe them anything, that is wasted energy. And to sort of take it back to like the ROM conversation about golfers are one of routine, and they need to have, like, if you're fighting with basic silly questions about, I fired my caddy, like it didn't work out, no big deal, like I'm going to get another caddy. That is not a difficult question to answer as a professional golfer. Are you being investigated by the FBI? That's a difficult question that you are allowed to duck on the advice of legal counsel. Are you working with a different caddy is about as basic as it fucking gets. So I would just like him to sort of get a little bit better perspective and be like, the part of the interest, part of the reason why I make a lot of money, part of the reason why these sponsors put up $25 million is because they want people to give insight into who they are as golfers. So if you happen to walk, during a pro-am and a reporter comes up to you and was like, hey, can I ask you this quick question? It is not an affront to you personally, nor is it an affront to the people doing the pro-am that you can answer a couple quick questions. That is just basic how you do your job. Better players have done it for years. That some players, Rory makes himself available kind of all the time to people he knows and sees regularly. So like you can do that too, Colin, and then avoid all that distraction stuff, and you can do whatever you want to work on your golf game.
I'm closer to you, Kevin, than to Andy's optimism with Colin. I would just, to put in, the distance is probably not as big as it is. He's slow. He's like 174, 175 ball speed, but like Scottie's like 177 to 180. He's behind him. He's behind him. But Colin doesn't, like, he's like a JJ Spawn type of length off the tee. And again, that's way behind Rory. That's way behind some of the top guys. But to that point, I think Colin's skill set is dominated by somebody like Scottie. Scottie hits it a little bit farther and basically just as accurate. The iron play is better, even though Colin's a great iron player. And then Colin's putting has not been good. His short game started to look good at the beginning of this year, then kind of regressed back to where we've seen it. He's limited. He's not going to overpower a golf course. He's probably not going to putt well enough to launch himself up into contention if the ball striking's a little bit off. So I think he's kind of locked into being the 7th to 15th best player in the world if he's playing pretty well. Yeah, you do have to get better. So I don't know that Colin, he's not going to stink, but I think the days of him being a top 5 player are over, and I wouldn't be picking him to win. I wouldn't go out of my way to pick him to win a major unless the setup were like super accuracy heavy and not going to penalize a little bit of lack of distance off of the tee. The player I was going to say is going to struggle kind of in a similar vein of you need to keep getting better, and he hasn't, is Hideki Matsuyama, who I would be kind of devastated if Hideki is not a relevant golfer again. But I think this year, when you look at players who are among the most disappointing, I think Hideki's kind of near the top of that list. He won the Century to start the year, and he had won a playoff event. Not that those are the most prestigious golf tournaments in the world, but in fall of 2024. So I feel like there was a little bit of, hey, this could be a good year for Hideki. But you talk about a player whose putting has held him back. And like we said, in 2015 to 2017, I think you could get away with having a weakness in your game. Now guys are just too good and just too optimized that Hideki, inconsistent off the tee and not being able to putt, despite the unbelievable short game and iron play, he wasn't relevant at all this year. So I think that would be a really disappointing player if we don't really hear from him again. He's about to turn 34, so he should have a couple more years. But I mean, talk about one of the great golfers of the last 10 years who, when he's on, is the best player in the world. I think we might kind of be getting close to the end of that.
Yeah, I agree. It's very rare for somebody's career, their greatness to span more than 10 years. And Hideki has done his 10 years at the top of the game, and he's spilled over. Maybe he's gotten a couple extra years, but you think about Hideki, it's 2013 is kind of where he jumped on the stage and became this world-class player. And the Muirfield was where he kind of flashed early. And I think along those same lines, they're really great players are 10-year players. Less great players are 7 or 5-year windows. And someone who I think has gotten to the end of his window of being really a class player is Patrick Cantlay. And I like what Joseph has said, about the game gets better. The game evolves. Players are better. I was just listening before this podcast to a Zach Lowe podcast with Stan Van Gundy, where he's like, I don't think a lot of the greatest players of all time, if you took them in the NBA in their current form, would be able to get on an NBA court today.
Right.
And I think that we romanticize golfers, and I think Tiger would still probably be a really great player. I wonder if he would have the wins that he had. But I think that Patrick Cantlay is like the perfect example of a player that was really good at everything, and that all-around skill. I marvel at the talent, and the ability to be really a top 30, 40 guy in every facet on the PGA Tour. Like, more respect should go to guys that assemble their game that way. But it also comes when that standard on the PGA Tour and every one of those skill facets goes up just a little bit, you could get knocked down a little bit. And that all-around skill, he's still going to be a really good player. But I think, when you just start to think about if you're drafting who will play it well at a major, he has tumbled way down my list. He's not, and I think the years of him being, a first page, I can't believe this guy hasn't won, maybe are getting to the end here.
Can I throw out a funny wild card question to bring us to a close here? That you didn't get to prepare for this, so you just had. Who would be the funniest major winner that's within reason in 2026? That's an actual, and I can sort of filibuster here for a sec while you guys think about it. I think that Patrick Reed winning a second Masters would be incredibly funny. Would just be and it's not unrealistic because he was in contention last year. Great short game. Don't necessarily have to drive it forever there. He's
in the top 50 in the world rankings right now. He's 44, so he's in other majors.
Patrick Reed being a 2-time major Masters winner would be such an incredible troll on the rest of golf history. Forever being Patrick Reed won 2 Masters. Writing that story on Sunday night, don't think I could stop giggling about just Patrick Reed having got one over on everyone else once again.
Rory putting the green jacket on him would be pretty fun.
Yes, that would also be unbelievable.
If you're doing funniest, you went kind of within reach. I think funniest if Taylor Gooch gets into majors next year and wins a major. That's not a super realistic one, but that's the funniest one.
It is very funny.
I'm going to go. I hear this guy's a lovely guy. Lovely, wonderful guy.
Here we go.
His nickname in college was The Project. Members on the range at the club, the course that the team would practice on would comment about how they didn't think he had the game to play, because it was a rough go for a number of years. I think just, I would love this because the major would be immediately discredited Like if he wins at Aronimink, people will have the knives out for the PGA Championship. But if Kurt Kitayama wins a major, I will just be laughing hysterically because like there's something about the way he plays golf. He hits it far.
Sure.
His statistics are pretty good, but the viewing experience is
tough.
like horrifying. Like it is just awful to watch him play. Like the swing, like the way his swing is, it just looks so out of control, and he just blasts the ball around. People would just be, the knives would be out because they'd be just bomb and gouge. This is, even if he was like just hitting every fairway, people would be, if he just put on a precision, like a display of
Clinic,
excellence and precision, just visually how it looks would offend so many people that Kurt Kitayama tops the list for me.
He would have the same number of championships as fellow Chico, California resident Aaron Rodgers if he won a championship. Maybe. So, they grew up not that far apart in age. I think like 5 years apart in age. So
the thing about Kitayama is he'd be on the list of players that I think you could take to like a random muni and hustle people with.
Yeah.
Like Kurt Kitayama, if you dressed him up in just like schlubby clothes, when he took a practice swing, nobody would be like, this is a PGA Tour player.
Eric Cole, I think, still takes the cake in that category, but yes.
Well, he's a minor league tour legend. I think you couldn't take him to South Florida because every dumpy muni would recognize him and be like, you won 10 minor league tour events here.
Fair enough.
it's a fun question because like, Adam Scott came close to winning a major last year. Justin Rose came very close to winning a major. So like, is there someone else in their 40s that, might contend in a major this year? We can't.
Sergio.
We feel like, Sergio would be kind of hilarious. Sergio winning
at the Masters would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Not in their 40s, but Brian Harmon at Birkdale would be very funny.
It would be very funny.
The European press did not enjoy the last one. Let's just have him run it right back.
I mean, if Phil were to somehow like have another like out of body experience at the Masters or at Birkdale, that would be an incredibly funny outcome.
Rory putting the green jacket on Phil would be quite humorous.
If this shit happens, we have it covered. Like you heard it here first.
All right, that does it. Thank you guys. And we'll be back next week for another edition of the Fried Egg Podcast. Big thanks to producer PJ, running the ones and twos. I don't have it handy, but I know the Pro Shop order deadline is relatively soon to get your shipments. So if you're looking for gifts, last minute gifts, great last minute gift would be a Fried Egg Golf Club membership. That's an easy one. I'm a big fan of printing it out. You just print something out for someone the day of. That's a good one. But then there's a ton of merch, lots of great stuff in there. Anyways, thanks to PJ. That's proshop.thefriedegg.com. Apparently you have 10 days. He's been 10 days to make your orders. But that might be on today, so that might be down to 8 days by Wednesday when you're listening to this. So, thank you guys, and we'll be back next week.